Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. It's a pleasure to be back again after quite a long break. And during the absence from this center, I've had quite a few interesting experiences. I spent a bit of time in the Philippines to promote Buddhism and did my Dhamma tour. That was actually the third tour that I've done in the Philippines. And in conjunction with that, I brought back one Filipino Buddhist who was born a Catholic, but he became a Buddhist, and in fact he then became ordained in the Vihara Buddha Gautama under Bhante Dhammavudo as a Samanera for nearly 4 weeks. He has just returned back last Wednesday. 2 days ago I sent him back to the Philippines. He'd been here for a month. So that was a wonderful experience. For those of you who have been following me on Facebook, you would be able to hear all that. I'll read all about it. Okay. So today's sharing is on meditation, but I'm not going to be teaching anything about how to meditate. That is not what I'm here to do. I'm here to briefly introduce the concept of meditation, why we should do it, and how we can benefit from it. So basically, it is a sharing on meditation based on the original teachings of the Buddha, as taught to me by my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, as well as various sharings from Venerable Agachita and Venerable Dhammavudo. So we're going to take a look at this, what is meditation and how it connects with the Sublime Eightfold Way, or what you call the Noble Eightfold Path. And we're going to explore meditation, which is based on the teachings in the Sutta Vinaya. That means as taught by the Buddha according to the sutras. And we're going to examine what is Samatha and what is VIPASSANA cultivation as taught by the Buddha according to the sutras. And finally, we'll just summarize with what are the benefits of meditation. So it all begins now. We talk about how meditation began. It all begins in the palace, in the palace of the Sakya clan, where this young prince Siddhartha was enjoying a lot of sensual pleasures. He was surrounded by women. He has apparently 3 or 4 different palaces for different seasons. So he was enjoying sensual pleasures. And from time to time, he managed to sneak out at night and discover that things outside the palace is very different from what is inside the palace. So he got curious and started exploring in the evening what is going on outside. Then he saw the signs. He saw a dead corpse, he saw an old man, he saw a sick person, and so on. And from there, he realized that he needed to go and find out what is really all this is all about, to seek the truth. And he realized that there's a lot of suffering out there. So he began to learn from a few teachers. So during the time he was in the palace, he was basically enjoying sensual pleasures. So he was really experiencing one extreme. After he became enlightened, he spoke about the 2 extremes. So this is one of the 2 extremes he spoke about, enjoying sensual pleasures. And basically, this is a very common human indulgence. So, we don't have to be judgmental about ourselves. We all go through it. We all do. Every one of us, at some point in time, we are delighting and enjoying sensual pleasures. And it is not something easy to give up. So unless you fully renounce, it's very, very difficult to give it all up. So Prince Siddhartha realized he had to do something. So he went out and started to learn from various teachers. But he was not satisfied, because the 2 teachers he learned from, he realized they had limited knowledge. So he went and practiced on his own. So from this, he realized that there is a lot to do with emotions. Enjoying sensual pleasure is really the way we react emotionally to what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And after he became enlightened, he actually explained that emotions dominate the world. Emotions create distress, meaning mental turbulence, mental disturbances, distress. Emotion is that one thing to which all are spellbound. That means every single one of us, until we can become enlightened, we are all trapped in this emotional excitement and emotional reaction. and this is found in the Samyutta Nikaya, Chitta Sutta. And basically it is emotional reaction that leads us to all the experiences of suffering. So this emotional excitement, what is it about? The cause of all our unhappiness and our feeling of insecurity in this world is our reactions to emotional excitements. So this reaction to emotional excitement is what my teacher called tanha. And of course, tanha is commonly translated as craving. Craving is okay, it's a very meaningful word, but unfortunately it does not adequately convey the real meaning of tanha. Tanha really is emotional reaction. Our reactions to emotional excitements. That is tanha. If it is something pleasurable, we want more of it. If it is something unpleasant, we want to get rid of it. So the solution is to get rid of these self-centered emotional excitements that arise, such as lust and greed, or otherwise known as lobha, and aversion and hatred, otherwise known as dosa, and also the delusion of the existence of the self, moha. So basically these are the three roots of conditioning that lead us to our suffering. So the solution that Prince Siddhartha realized is to do something to get rid of it. So he practiced asceticism as an attempt to try to get rid of these emotional reactions. And these emotions also appear in the form of the 5 hindrances called the Panca-nivarana. So basically it manifests itself in the form of the 5 hindrances we'll look at in a moment. So these 5 hindrances, what are they? Number 1 is kamachanda, which is commonly translated as craving for sensual pleasures. Now I will normally use the translation of my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji. If it is something different from conventional translations, I'll put the conventional translations in bracket. So here it's quite common. It's the universal translation of the word kamachanda, craving for sensual pleasures. And vyapada, which is anger, hatred and ill will towards things that are unpleasant, things that are painful, things that are not desired. And thina mida, and here you have common translation sloth and torpor. Sloth suggests laziness, torpor suggests lethargic, right? Basically it is an experience of inaction. Now, sloth and torpor are reasonable translations, but according to my teacher, thina mida is a little more deeper than just laziness and no action. Thina mida basically means a person's mind is confused to the point that he doesn't know what to do. He's lost, he's confused. And in the moment of confusion and being lost, he despairs, he experiences depression. And when people experience despair and depression, they have difficulty taking action, taking positive action. And because of that, they tend to not do anything. As you know, people who are in deep depression, what do? They sit there all day feeling sorry for themselves and crying, lamenting and so on. So that is basically the lack of action. That's why it's called sloth and torpor. It is not really about laziness, but it is about inability to motivate yourself to do something positive or do something helpful. So that is thina mida. Then the next is uddhacca kukucca, which is translated as restlessness. Some even translate it as remorse. It is not really remorse or repentance, but restlessness suggests that the person doesn't know what to do and starts to do this and do that, do all kinds of things. Basically, it is a state of anxiety and worry. So the 4th of the 5 hindrances is anxiety and worry, which is often translated as restlessness and even various other explanations. But really this is a state where the person is confused and doesn't know what to do and tries different things and doesn't seem to have positive actions to produce wholesome outcomes. And finally, the fifth one is that state of confusion, which is vicikicca, commonly translated as doubt. But there is a very unique and very special term in psychology that explains this very well. It's called cognitive dissonance, which I think it's worthwhile exploring, because this word doubt, it is really not doubt. Vicikicca is not doubting things. Vicikicca is being torn between two kinds of beliefs, emotional beliefs and rational beliefs. Let's take a look at this meaning of the word vicikicca, cognitive dissonance. Basically, it is torn between feelings, our emotional feeling, and reasoning, which is our intellect, our ability to think. Our ability to think tells us that certain things we should avoid, tells us that certain sensual pleasures are not good for us. Indulging in certain sensual pleasures, overindulgence, doing too much of it is not good. Right? So the intelligence within us, the intellect, tells us we should not be doing that. That is good reasoning, good rational reason. But emotionally, there are certain things we like to do. We love to eat durian, for instance. And we know eating a lot of durian is not good for us. That we know. Knowing eating durian, too much of durian, is not good for our health, that is reasoning, that is our intelligence telling us. But at the same time, we enjoy durian so much, we can't give it up. We love to go to durian parties. We love to enjoy some of the nicest durians around. And that is feeling. So this is where feeling is pulling in one direction, reasoning is pulling in the other direction, and that is vicikicca. Basically, when feeling and reasoning pull in opposite directions, we experience cognitive dissonance, the state of vicikicca, and we invariably react according to emotions. We react according to how we feel. But the funny thing is, we are so smart, human beings are so intelligent, we use our intelligence to justify these emotionally charged decisions. So this condition is called vicikicca. And this is the last of the 5 hindrances that we need to get rid of. Basically, these are the 5 hindrances that hinder us, that prevent us, that stop us from cultivating our mind to a state of peace and stillness, mental equilibrium, to be able to experience samadhi, and then from there to be able to see through and gain full comprehension, full understanding, full knowledge and vision. So these are the hindrances we have to get rid of. So Prince Siddhartha tried to do that. So he went on his own with a group of 5 other people, and he started practicing asceticism. And he thought that to be the perfect solution, the human solution, humanistic solution. In fact, it was from there that he went on and realized a few other things that brought him to practice the proper way that led him to awakening. That's why it's often called, Buddhism is often called a humanistic solution, because this is the human practice, the human cultivation, the cultivation of the human mind by human effort, not by an external force, not by commandments of God or so on, but by human willpower. So first he tried this asceticism, and then he realized it didn't work. He tried to stop eating, and then he tried to stop drinking, and finally he even tried to stop breathing, and that was when he fainted, and he nearly died from all that. He became very thin. Fortunately, he was saved from that, and he went on to practice a more wholesome form, where he meditated under the Bodhi tree, and from there he became awakened, right? And he was called the Buddha. Now the word Buddha came from the Sanskrit word bodh. Bodh means to awaken, right? To awaken from the dream of existence. He awakened because he discovered that there are 2 extremities. He became awakened from these 2 extremities. The first is this experience or indulgence in sensual pleasures, expression of emotional excitement by releasing tension in action. That means he feels this emotional excitement, he releases it in action by enjoying it, by indulging in it to extremes. So this is one extremity he has warned us to avoid. The other extremity was his practice of asceticism, which was the suppression and repression of emotional urges. And that is basically self-torment and self-affliction in the form of asceticism, by withholding all tensions, holding back, not eating, not drinking, and even tried not breathing. Now, in his first sutra, in his first sermon, he basically warned us against these two extremities. And then he said, there is a middle way. The middle way is basically conscious relaxation, tranquility, and mental equilibrium. Right? The Pali word for this is basically samadhi, which then leads to upekkha, and commonly also called equanimity. So this is basically learning how to relax, tranquilize the mind to the level of samadhi, and attaining a mental equilibrium that finally leads to upekkha, equanimity. So he taught this the middle way. This is the middle way, that how we can find a third way. A lot of people have a misunderstanding that the middle way is actually a compromise between the two extremities, and that is not correct. Compromising between the two extremities means sometimes you indulge in sensual pleasures, sometimes you force yourself to withhold and self-torment. Now that is not the middle way. That is a compromise. The middle way is really the third way, the cultivation. Cultivation based on right view, right understanding, based on fully understanding and then practicing the good effort of right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. So this is really the third way, the middle way. Not a compromise between the two extremes. And that is how he became awakened. And this is a harmonious awakening. And this is called Sama Sambodhi. Sama Sambodhi, translated by my teacher, means awakening from the dream of existence. Because the word Bodhi comes from the word Bodh, which means awaken. Awaken from what? Awaken from the dream of existence. Understanding the realities of life. And this is exemplified by the Buddha himself, the harmoniously awakened one. And from there, he taught us that Buddhist morality is not based on heteronomous morality. Heteronomous morality means we behave in a virtuous manner because someone told us to. We behave because it was commandments, because it was rules and regulations. So in other words, if you behave wholesome, if you practice wholesome behavior because someone told you to, then you are doing it because someone told you, and that someone telling you is an external force, and that is what is known as heteronomous morality. External forces make you do good, and that is not good. It's like forcing you. It's like obeying commandments. What the Buddha actually taught us is to be able to develop and cultivate right view, right understanding, and then be able to carry out these right actions. And this is what is known as autonomous morality. Heteronomous morality is called Silabbata Paramasa, which is often translated as attachments to rites and rituals. But according to my teacher, it is actually more than just attachment. Attachment to rites and rituals is the symptom of what is really happening. What is really happening is that you behave in a good way because you think in a very superstitious way. Oh, if I do good, then therefore I'm going to gain this, I'm going to gain that. You have an attachment to gain something. Whereas, if you practice autonomous morality or kusala mula, you basically understand what is good, what is wholesome, what is good for you, what is blameless, how you can benefit from it, and you practice it. You practice it because you realize the benefit from it. You realize how you can gain from it and how it can lead you to a happier and a more peaceful life. And when you understand that and then you do good, you cultivate your mind, then is cultivation based on understanding, not cultivation based on being told. So that is kusala mula, right? Wholesome and skillful means. So mula actually means the origin or arising, how it arises. Kusala means wholesome and skillful ways. So wholesome and skillful ways of arising. Right? So it's wholesome, skillful means that lead us to virtues and virtuous behavior. So that will lead us to sila, and sila can lead us to samadhi and panya. Basically, this is the fundamental doctrines taught by the Buddha. The rest are really the details of these process. One of the important detail is the Eightfold Path, or what my teacher calls the Sublime Eightfold Way. Now I put in red what is the common translation, but I'm using the translation of my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji. He calls Samadhi harmonious perspective. Now people call it right view. Actually, the word sama is being translated to mean harmonious or in unison, right? Flowing in unison. So basically, harmonious with your well-being and your wellness. Harmonious perspective. And sama sankappa, harmonious orientation. Some people call it right thought or right understanding. Sama vacha, harmonious speech or right speech. Sama kamanta, or right action or harmonious action. Sama ajiva, right livelihood or harmonious lifestyle. Actually, lifestyle is a more accurate translation because it does not only refer to livelihood, what you do for a living. Lifestyle refers to how you live your life every moment of the day. So in other words, sama ajiva is not about what you do for a living, not only about what you do for a living, but also about how you live your life every moment of the day. So that is really what sama ajiva is referring to. Not just holding wholesome jobs, but also practicing wholesome behavior, virtuous behavior, every moment of the day. Right thoughts, right speech, right actions. And sama vayama, and this is where meditation begins. Like sama vayama is referring to the beginning of the practice of meditation. Harmonious exercise, or some call it right effort. Here the effort is not just talking about effort to do good. It is beyond just doing good. It is the effort to cultivate your mind. Therefore, it is actually harmonious exercise. What is the difference between effort and exercise? Effort is something you do. That's it. You take action. You do something. You put in the effort to do it. That is effort. Exercise. Now, what happens when you exercise? You do something, you put in the effort, and not only that you put in the effort, but you also monitor the results. You observe whether the efforts are effective, whether it works, whether it produces the result it is supposed to produce. So that is what exercise is. It's more than just effort. So therefore, meditation is not about just putting in the effort, but also about the monitoring, observing the results, whether it is producing the desired results, whether you are experiencing the benefits. So that is really what sama vayama means. And then it leads you to mindfulness, or right mindfulness, or harmonious attention, sama sati. And from there, with right attention, right mindfulness, it then leads you to attain a level of mental equilibrium, which is commonly translated as concentration. So sama samadhi, which is a level of mental equilibrium where the mind is perfectly stilled, and that stilling of the mind is commonly translated as a concentrated mind. Concentrated mind is okay, that is a reasonably good explanation. But unfortunately, because of the word samadhi being translated as concentration, a lot of people think of this word in terms of the verb, the effort of concentrating. Actually, samadhi is not about the effort of concentrating. Samadhi is about the attainment of mental equilibrium, a concentrated mind. So this word concentration is not referring to the verb of concentrating, but rather to the outcome of a concentrated mind. Today, many teachers, especially the monks, are beginning to realize the word concentration is not very accurate. My teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, does not use the word concentration to mean samadhi. He uses mental equilibrium, or sometimes he calls it stillness of mind. And Venerable Agachita uses compo focus, composed and focused mind. I will explain Venerable Agachita's explanation later on, how he came to that word compo focus. It is based on reference to the sutra, that the way samadhi is developed, right? And we're going to cover how that happens. So basically, this is the Noble Eightfold Path, or what my teacher calls the Sublime Eightfold Way. What we commonly understand as meditation came from the word Bhāvanā. Now, Bhāvanā in Pali, actually, there's no word that represents Bhāvanā, but the closest word is, it is cultivation. So really, the meaning of the word Bhāvanā is cultivation. But during the time when the Westerners began to translate these Pali terms and Sinhalese terms into English, they thought the word meditation will suffice. In fact, sometimes meditation also refers to contemplation. Right? Now, not all forms of Bhāvanā is contemplation, because some forms of Bhāvanā is really not contemplation. Samatha Bhāvanā, for instance, is not contemplation. So it is really cultivation of the mind. So that's what Bhāvanā really means. So to be more precise, what we think of as Buddhist meditation, it is really cultivation of mind. So when we look at this common term meditation, we should understand that it came from the word Bhāvanā, and the only proper method is based on the Eightfold Path. So in other words, it is called Arya-Magga Bhāvanā, or cultivation through the Noble Eightfold Way, or the Sublime Eightfold Way, in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha as stated in the Sutta Vinaya. Any meditation method that does not fit into the Noble Eightfold Path, that is really not the way the Buddha has taught it. Buddha has taught it as the Noble Eightfold Path. There is no alternative to that. So in other words, it is very important to understand that if you are learning meditation or learning Bhāvanā from a teacher, that the teacher is using the Noble Eightfold Path as the guide, as the framework of how you should learn and practice and benefit from meditation or Bhāvanā. So, and there are so many distortions and variations. I'll just mention a few. There are many individual teachers who personalize their own techniques and their own interpretations and their own variations to the teachings of the Buddha. They even modify the philosophy, they modify the methods and the techniques. And all these are departure from the Noble Eightfold Path, departure from Arya-Magga Bhāvanā. So in other words, they are not really teaching what the Buddha taught. So you have to be very careful that if you are learning from any teacher, to be sure that the teacher is following the Noble Eightfold Path as the guide, as the framework for teaching meditation. And there are also variations arising from later day commentaries. Many different commentators give their own interpretation. Perhaps the most famous and best known is the interpretations of Buddhaghosa, a scholar that came about 800 to 900 years after the time of the Buddha. Now that is 800 or 900 years after the passing of the Buddha, a long time later. He started to even write a book on meditation called the Visuddhimagga, or the Path to Purification. Visuddhi means purification. Visuddhimagga means the methods of purification. So he wrote Visuddhimagga. Now there are some teachers who follow strictly the Visuddhimagga. Then of course there are countries, geographical territories, cultural differences between different countries, and each country has perhaps modified or varied or localized certain methods, certain teachings. As some of you may be aware, the Myanmarese technique is not the same as the Thai methods or Thai forest monks methods, and the Thai forest monks methods are not necessarily the same as the Sri Lankan teachers' methods. So even all these different methods in the Theravada traditions may be different because of localized variations. So you have to be aware that certain techniques being taught are taught because of localized variations. And then there are variations from ancient traditional shamanism. Now shamanism basically is a very what you call superstitious form of ancient beliefs, ancient superstitions. And some of these ancient superstitions got merged into Buddhism. So therefore there are variations from ancient traditional shamanism, which includes practices of tantrism, asceticism, yogic and various others. Tantrism, asceticism and yoga actually arise from India. They began in India. But somehow tantrism spread throughout various parts of the north and through the Silk Route and into Tibet. So therefore quite a lot of tantrism is being spread into Tibet, and therefore you have Tibetan tantrism. And they have various methods which are actually quite different from what most of us would understand as the proper way to meditate. They have their own unique methods and techniques, right? So be aware that there are many of these variations, distortions, personalizations, modifications, and localizations. So when you follow any teacher, be mindful of whether the teacher is following the Eightfold Path. This is the only advice I can give you. And of course, there is also a very popular form of meditation in the West called transcendental meditation. This is by far the most popular form of meditation in the West, in Western countries. Now, this is quite different from Buddhist meditation, but I'm not going to spend time talking about it. It's very different from Buddhist meditation. It involves the use of mantra. It sometimes even involves a bit of chanting, but it could lead to some form of self-hypnosis. For those of you who have attended my talk on meditation and self-hypnosis, you would understand what I mean. But maybe one time I will come back and repeat that talk to maybe help you refresh yourself what is self-hypnosis. Many of us practice meditation, and if we are not guided properly, we could fall into a form of self-hypnosis without realizing it. Okay, so maybe I'll leave that to some other time. Today I'm going to focus on mainstream meditation, Bhāvanā. So Bhāvanā cultivation, there are two stages in Bhāvanā cultivation. And first is the cultivation of tranquility, called Samatha Bhāvanā. The second is the cultivation of insight, called Vipassana Bhāvanā. And tranquility or samatha is the relaxation of body, the cessation of the emotional mind or the affective process called chitta, and basically stopping emotional excitement and reactions. So this is samatha. There is no contemplation involved. In other words, you don't focus on any object and contemplate on the object. You basically still the mind using the breath as the anchor. The breath can help you bring your mind inwards and then still the mind. I'll explain a bit more about that process of samatha later on, which leads to samadhi. And the second stage, vipassana, is the unshaken wisdom, cultivating the unshaken wisdom into the realities of life, into the unstable, insecure, and impersonal threefold realities of life, and having full comprehension of the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? The causes of suffering, right? The cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So basically, this is cultivation of insight, vipassana. So what is Samatha and Vipassana according to the Buddha's definition? And this can be easily found in the Anguttara Nikaya in one of the Sutra 4.94, right? Basically the Book of Force, Sutra number 94, Tatiya Samadhi Sutra. And I'm going to draw from some of the lessons I learned from Venerable Agachita, as well as combining it from some things that I learned from my teacher, to explain a little bit of it. In order to understand properly, right, what really is meditation and how to practice, it is very important that we follow these, the way the Dhamma is taught. And these are written down in these various books. Say one group of them is called the sutras or discourses. So I'm going to draw on the sutras to explain some of the teachings. So therefore these are based on the original teachings of the Buddha. Definition of Samatha and Vipassana. Basically, the practice of Samatha leads to Samadhi, or mental equilibrium. It is the stilling of the mind. Stilling means bringing it to a stillness. Stilling of what? Stilling of the emotional mind, chitta. Chitta is the emotional mind. And not only just stilling it, settling it, calming it, tranquilizing the mind, leading to mental equilibrium, and finally culminating in stillness of mind. The mind is perfectly stilled. So that is Samadhi. And that is the practice of Samatha that leads to Samadhi. And then the important thing about the Samadhi is that you need to attain this level of Samadhi before you are able to realize Vipassana, right? Clear seeing. Vipassana comes from the word Vipassana. Vi means distinct or clear, right? Crystal clear, distinct, distinguished, right? So you're able to discern, be able to see one from another very clearly. Pasana is seeing, and here it's not seeing as in using your eyes. This is seeing with your mind, right? And this is seeing with your mind to be able to see distinctly. So distinct seeing culminating in wisdom, panya. So you're able to attain a level of wisdom called panya, right? Knowledge, vision leading to wisdom, panya. So that is really Vipassana, leading to panya. Now, in several sutras, the Buddha pointed out the stages to awakening. And this is unbroken. They are consistent. And I'm referring specifically here to the Anapanasati Sutta. But this same sequence appears in several sutras. So in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha said, monks, when Anapanasati is cultivated and developed, it is of great benefit and great reward. It helps eliminate the 5 hindrances. There you have it. It's very important to get rid of the 5 hindrances in the process of cultivation of mind. And then the Buddha went on to say, Anapanasati, when cultivated and developed, leads to the fulfillment of the 4-fold introspection, Satipatthana. So Anapanasati, when cultivated and developed, leads to the fulfillment of Satipatthana. And Satipatthana, when cultivated and developed, leads to the fulfillment of Satta Bojjhanga, or 7 steps to awakening. Some people call this the 7 factors of enlightenment. But my teacher translates this more precisely as the 7 steps to awakening, because these 7 are steps in sequence. Sort of in sequence. They are antecedental. That means one follows the other, right? It is not just 7 different things, not 7 discrete things. They are 7 things that must go together. So this is Satta Bojjhanga. So Satipatthana, when cultivated and developed, leads to the fulfillment of Satta Bojjhanga. And Satta Bojjhanga, when cultivated and developed, leads to the fulfillment of full comprehension and emancipation. Full comprehension basically is fully knowing. Fully knowing means you have gained a level of wisdom, panya. And emancipation means liberation, vimutti. Vimutti means liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from all forms of suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's only through this cultivation that you can attain that level. So as you can see, the Buddha has taught that this is how it should be. That you should cultivate the stillness of mind through anapanasati, and then the ability to be able to discern and distinguish a level of mindfulness through satipatthana, and then cultivating the 7 steps to awakening, satabhujanga. Then only you can attain panya and vimutti. So in graphical form, basically anapanasati, my teacher translates it as attentiveness to breathing. Now some people basically try to say that anapanasati is contemplation on your breath, but actually that is not so. There is no contemplation of objects. In samatha, there are no objects to contemplate. So in other words, it's not contemplation on the breath. It is using the breath as a mechanism, as an anchor to bring the attention inwards. So bringing the attention inwards helps you to focus inwardly, introspection. So this is attentiveness to your breathing. Paying attention to your breathing does that. And when you begin to focus your attention inwards, when that is fully developed and cultivated, it leads to the fulfillment of satipatthana, the fourfold introspection. There are 4 foundations involved in this satipatthana. And when that is cultivated, it leads to the 7 steps to awakening, satabhujanga, and then leads to full comprehension, panya, and emancipation or liberation, vimutti. This is the complete method prescribed by the Buddha, the whole framework. And basically it is based on the Noble Eightfold Path, and the actual practice of meditation begins with step number 6, Sama-vayama, harmonious exercise, or some call it right effort. And in the sutras it was mentioned Eightfold Path. It was not mentioned as 10, but actually it leads to the 2 fruits of this Eightfold Path. The 2 fruits are panya and vimutti. Full comprehension, to be awakened, and vimutti, that is to be liberated from suffering. So there are really 10. 8 are the stages as steps, or eightfold, and then the last 2 are fruits. Samatha versus vipassana, how are they different? Samatha is about how to still the mind in a 4-step process. These 4 steps are very clearly mentioned in a couple of sutras. It is not about object of focus, whether conceptual objects or ultimate realities, or some call it ultimate truth, you know. But truth is not a good word to use. Basically it's realities. I'll explain that statement later, why truth is not a good word to use. It's ultimate realities. Vipassana is about the object of focus. And what object of focus? There is only one, and that is sankhara. The object of focus is the process of sankhara, and how to regard sankhara, how to investigate sankhara, and how to develop insightful understanding about sankhara. That is vipassana. These are all explained in the sutras. And in fact, this chart here is made by Bhante Agachita. I borrowed it from him in one of the lessons that he taught. So these colorful charts here, these came from Venerable Agachita. And he talks about samatha based on the sutra that was mentioned earlier on. How is chitta to be made to stand properly? How is chitta made to sit properly? How it is made to be unified, and how it can be brought together in a composed manner. So basically, steadying, settling down, unified, and composed. These are the 4 steps, right? How to stand properly, how to sit properly. Now, this is also mentioned in one of the sutras, right? Vitakka Santana Sutra, where the Buddha was talking about a person who is running. In order for him to bring the whole body to a calmness, from running he has to walk. He can't transform from running straight away to a complete stillness of the body. From running he starts to walk, slow down, no more running, just walk. From walking, he stands. From standing, he sits down. From sitting down, he lies down. Basically, this is the process. And this is mentioned in the Vitakka Sutra. So therefore, standing, sitting, and then unifying. Basically a form of lying down, and finally becoming composed. Right? Steady, settled down, unified, composed. This is found in the Sutra, Vitakka Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya 20, talking about the attainment of Samadhi. And in that verse, it is mentioned very clearly. With the abandoning of the 5 hindrances, right within the mind steadies. So the 4 steps. Number 1, steadies. Number 2, settles. Number 3, become unified. Number 4, become composed. Now, this word composed, number 4, very often some people translate it as concentrated. Right? But actually this is Venerable Agachita's translation. It is composed. He has explained that in this other sutra, in Anggutta Nikaya, Book of Force, number 41, Samadhi Bhāvanā Sutra, it is explained there are 4 types of samadhi, not one. A lot of people think that, oh, samadhi is one. Samadhi is just a generic term of referring to a mental equilibrium. This mental equilibrium come in 4 different forms, and this is what the Buddha has described in that sutra. First is about the attainment of jhanas, the 4 jhanas. Second is the attainment of this knowledge and vision, to be able to see clearly. And this is the perception of light. Here, perception of light is referring to a person entering a room that is dark. And only when there is light that you are able to see clearly. You have full knowledge and vision of what is inside the room. So in this case, perception of light is referring to the light that brightens up a room so you can see clearly and gain the knowledge and vision of what is around you. The ability to see clearly. This is sometimes misunderstood as seeing the light in your mind. Right? Some people will teach you meditation technique where, oh, you see this bright light inside your mind and you see it beginning to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. That is not what Buddha meant. That is not the perception of light. That, I call it hallucination. You are imagining it in your mind. You don't see that light in your mind. You see knowledge and vision and understanding, because things become lighted, not because of this light you see in your mind. If you meditate and you begin to see this bright light in your mind, be aware you are falling into hypnotic state. I can explain that in the next sharing about hypnosis. And then the third form of samadhi is basically about mindfulness and awareness of feelings, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana. And finally, the 4th form of samadhi is basically the destruction of all taints, destruction of defilements. Right? And this is through contemplating rise and fall of aggregates. Basically, the first type falls into the stage we call samatha, and the other 3 are what we call vipassana. So basically this is what samadhi is. So there are really 4 types of samadhi, and samadhi is part and parcel of vipassana. You can cultivate it, right? And here is Bhante Agachita's explanation of how the word samadhi is translated. He says it is about composure and about focus. It is not about concentration. See the difference. Concentration there says the ability to direct all your effort and attention on one thing without thinking of other things. But actually samadhi, the cultivation of samadhi, Bhante Agachita explains it is really composure and focus, the state of being calm and in control of your feelings or your behavior or your actions, right? And then to be able to adapt or be adjusted so that things can be seen clearly. And it is only by attaining this level of samadhi that you begin to see clearly, that you begin to experience vipassana. So in other words, samadhi before vipassana, right? And he pointed out that it is really composure and focus. Therefore, Bhante Akachita calls it compo focus, because it is about composure and focus. Concentration is really about effort. Right? By putting in this effort, it tires the mind. This effort tires the mind. And how can samadhi be attained? Basically, it begins with this right effort, or which is the sixth step in the Eightfold Path. On the left, this chart is produced by Bhante Agachita. On the right, I'm going to show you what my teacher has explained as the Eightfold Path: harmonious perspective, right view. Right thought is harmonious orientation, right speech is harmonious speech, harmonious action, harmonious lifestyle. Then comes the beginning of the practice of Bhāvanā, which is right effort, harmonious exercise. Right mindfulness, harmonious attention. Right compo focus is harmonious mental equilibrium. So you can see here, Venerable Akachita calls samadhi as compo focus, not concentration. Venerable Punaji calls it mental equilibrium. Both mean basically the same thing. There's no difference in what they mean. They just use slightly different words, but it is not about concentration. And then comes the two fruits, the fruit of Panya and the fruit of Vimutti. Panya is right knowledge or full comprehension. Vimutti is right liberation or emancipation, right? Liberation from all forms of suffering. So this is basically the translations of these two teachers that I have learned from. So we talked about samatha leading to samadhi, vipassana leading to panya. So let's take a look at vipassana then. We have talked a lot about samatha. Let's take a look at vipassana. Distinct seeing, that's what vipassana means. It leads to unshaken wisdom into anicca, dukkha, anatta, right, which are the threefold realities of life, and the full comprehension of the Four Noble Truths. Basically, this is what vipassana is all about. Let's take a look at the explanation of vipassana in the sutras. And it is explained that vipassana is about how sankhara is to be seen. It is about how sankhara is to be investigated, and it is about how sankhara is to be differentiated or distinctly seen, to be able to see clearly what is sankhara, how it arises. So therefore, let's take a look at what does it mean, this seeing of sankhara. Sankhara as the vipassana object. Basically, there are no hard and fast line drawn between concept and this thing called ultimate reality, because it's still all concepts in the mind. Whatever we call it, we can call it ultimate truth, we can call it concepts, but they are still concepts in our mind. Concepts in our mind are constructed. Construction is sankhara. So for vipassana contemplation, this construction process, sankhara, are not restricted to form, to the mind, or to various feelings. But it includes two very important things. It includes anything that falls into these two qualities. First, has been constructed by causes and conditions. That means it arises from causes and conditions, that there are conditions that lead to it. It arises. And it has the nature of arising and vanishing. What arises will dissipate. What arises will vanish. Nothing arises and stays there. What arises will then dissipate or vanishes. So basically, these are the two important attributes when we talk about sankhara. That's when we speak of sankhara, it is arises because of causes and conditions, and it has the attribute of the nature of arising and vanishing. Anything that is not there, then it is not sankhara and not to be included in this experience of vipassana, and do not have these two characteristics. So if they do not have these two characteristics, they are not considered as sankhara. Now my teacher basically says there are many people who talk about ultimate truth. What is the ultimate truth? Meditation is to seek the truth, but actually that is not the case. Meditation is really not about seeking the truth. The way we use our intelligence is really not just about seeking the truth. It's about solving a problem. This is what the Buddha has actually done. He has solved the problem. What problem did he solve? The problem of existence, the problem of suffering. So my teacher has pointed out, the purpose of human intelligence or human intellect is not to discover the truth, but to solve problems. So the Noble Eightfold Path is basically a methodology that the Buddha taught us to solve the problem. And what problem is it trying to solve? The problem of existence, the problem of our suffering, the problem of our lust and hatred and delusions. That is the problem that we are trying to solve when we apply the Noble Eightfold Path. We are not applying the Noble Eightfold Path to try to discover the truth. So in other words, the benefit and the fruit of meditation is really not about discovering the truth, but about solving the problem by attaining panya and vimutti. Panya, wisdom, full comprehension. Vimutti, liberation, liberation from suffering. So since the dawn of civilization, the greatest problem to be solved by humanity is the problem of existence. Birth, aging, sickness and death. This is really the problem we're trying to solve that leads us out of samsara. Otherwise we will continue to be reborn in samsara. We will continue to experience birth, aging, sickness and death, birth, aging, sickness and death, birth, aging, sickness and death continuously. So therefore it is to solve this problem of existence. So I hope you've understood that the very important message here is that Vipassana is not something you just practice by itself. It comes after you're able to go through all these other stages of practices. Now with these 5 spiritual faculties, Sada, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya, then the Buddha pointed out in the Patipanya Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya that there are 9 types of people who practice. The highest level are those who have basically now experienced the fruits of the practice and become arahant. That means they have now reaped the fruits of perfection, perfect practice. They are now fully awakened beings, arahant. One level lower than that are those who have already become anagami, but they are now practicing to become arahant. Number 2, right? One level weaker than that are the anagamis, those who have just attained anagami level. That means they have now reaped the fruits of their anagami practice. Then one level weaker than that, number 4, are the sakadagami, who have now started practicing to become anagami. And number 5, one level lower than that, number 5 are those who have now reaped the fruits of sakadagami, and so on, until number 8, which is all of us trying to practice to become sotapan. Maybe some of us are already sotapan, so congratulations, right? But a lot of us are still practicing to become sotapan, to enter the stream. And unfortunately, there are those in number 9. And of course, I'm happy to say that all of you being present here to share the Dhamma, you are not in number 9. Because you are already engaged in some form of Dhamma activities. So you are already number 8 or better. So number 9 are the ignorant people who don't want to know about the Dhamma, who don't want to care about the Dhamma, or could be who have never had the opportunity to be exposed to the Dhamma. So we are very fortunate to be reborn in the human realm, to be able to see, hear, smell, taste and touch, to be able to come across people, to be able to read the various sutras, to be able to exchange ideas and learn the Dhamma. So we are very fortunate. Right? There are other beings that are not so fortunate. Animals, for instance. Animals can never understand the Dhamma until they can do things that bring them to be reborn in the human realms, but otherwise they will never go beyond that. So basically we're very fortunate. Hopefully all of us are at number 8 or better. Hopefully there are some better than number 8 here. Okay. But each of us is our own practice. My personal advice, don't compare, don't compete, don't be conceited. These are the 3 C's that destroy us. The 3 C's of the ego: comparing, competing, and becoming conceited. You know, when some people know so much about the Dhamma, they go around and boasting their knowledge and try to prove somebody wrong. I got right view, you got wrong view, that kind of thing. That behavior is called conceit, right? So the 3 C's that destroy us: comparing, competing, and becoming conceited. And finally, this is according to the Pali Canon, the canonical notions of samatha and vipassana. Right? The aim, there are basically 7 things to talk about: the aim, the object, the mode, the feature, the state, the thoughts, and the hindrances. When it comes to samatha, the aim is to cultivate internal tranquility of mind or stillness of mind. That is the aim of samatha. Now, very importantly, I am speaking from my own experience. You know, one of the things I discovered is when you begin to meditate and you begin to think, say to yourself, oh, I want to experience jhana. That thought is not helpful. Because that thought, I want to experience jhana, what is happening? The I, the want is there. The ego is strong. And you program that into your mind subconsciously. So when you are meditating, the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind that says, I want to experience jhana, that starts to arise, and you are not aware of it because that is your unconscious mind. That unconscious mind could trick you into experiencing something that you think is jhana. So you are into self-hypnosis. That is how self-hypnosis arises. Auto-suggestions. You have suggested to yourself, you want to experience jhana. So it's very important when you begin to learn meditation, don't want anything. Don't expect anything. Just practice, and when you experience the stillness of mind, the tranquility of mind, you will be able to experience and reap the fruit of your practice. Don't have expectations and don't have desires, because desires and expectations become programmed into your subconscious, and your subconscious arises. For people who are not so well versed in meditation, your subconscious arises anytime to disturb you, to trick you, and you begin to hallucinate the experience of jhana. And for vipassana, the aim really is to be able to cultivate distinct seeing of rising and falling and conditionality. Causes and conditions, the rising and falling of experiences. So this can be gained through direct wisdom. Objects. It is mentioned, or rather it is not mentioned in any sutra, that there is an object in samatha. Breathing is only used as a mechanism to bring your attention inwards. Because if you think about it, if you are sitting there with your eyes closed, the only thing that can help you focus your thoughts inwards is your breathing. By paying attention to your breathing, right? And then it brings your attention inwards. So there is no object. Breathing is really just a mechanism. It is not an object of contemplation.
Rather, can we use the object as nothingness? Nothingness?
Nothingness is something that is accomplished, understood and accomplished only at a very high level. Not at the beginning. Yeah. Because there are levels beyond the 4th jhana where you are in the realm of nothingness. And there you truly understand and experience nothingness. But when you are meditating in this condition, at this stage, you will not be able to experience nothingness. You will not even recognize it.
Yeah.
So the important thing is just to use breathing as a mechanism. In the case of vipassana, sankhara is the object, to be able to distinctly view and investigate sankhara. That is what mode is about. In the case of mode, it is for samatha, it is those 4 steps. The gradual stilling of the mind culminating in compo focus through those 4 steps. Stilling, settling, steadying, unifying, and composing. And in the case of vipassana, is viewing and investigating sankhara. And with respect to your five senses, there is no mention in the case of samatha, but it is basically taught that you do not pay attention to your senses, right? And in the case of vipassana, you can then investigate, right? Investigate the sankhara in relation to your senses. And the state of gradual stilling of mind, gradual unfolding of wisdom, the thoughts, how you relate to thoughts. In the case of samatha, you basically let go your thoughts by substitution, you let go by reflection, you let go by ignoring and letting it go, detaching it and stilling it. So this is explained in Vitakka Santana Sutra, where there are 5 steps you can help to still your mind and release yourself from unwholesome thoughts. And in the case of vipassana, how you deal with thoughts, they are to be viewed, observed, investigated, and then distinctly seen as what are the causes and conditions and how they arise and fall away. Basically the 2 characteristics, subject to causes and conditions and how they arise and fall away. And finally, with the hindrances, how to abandon by stilling the mind. In the case of vipassana, how to abandon by fully understanding, full comprehension of causes and conditions and the instability, anicca, right? So, in summary, basically this is the Eightfold Path. It's very important that you learn meditation from a teacher who uses the Eightfold Path as the format, or rather as the framework to help you be able to learn the proper techniques. Benefits of meditation, simply put, for most of us, in fact for those of us who practice diligently, we can easily obtain the benefits on the left. Slow down your heart rate, improve blood circulation, lower the blood pressure, enhance your immune system, calming your anger, fear and anxiety, and relieving you of depression or depressive moods, making you a more stable, a more comfortable, peaceful person. So even simply learning basic meditation without going any deeper, you can already benefit with these benefits on the left. But if you begin to take the meditation seriously and you really want to become diligent at it and you have been practicing well, you begin to reap the fruits on the right. Right? You are able to abandon emotional excitement. That means you don't easily get excited over any kind of sensual pleasures. And you are able to tame your lust, your hatred and your delusion, your lobha, dosa and moha. You are able to then cultivate mindfulness or introspection, right? The 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then you are able to develop this cognitive consonance. Cognitive consonance is the opposite of cognitive dissonance. In here, cognitive consonance is my teacher's translation of the word ekagata. Ekagata, some people call it one-pointedness. Actually, it is not one-pointedness. The word ekagata is referring to a unified mind in one direction. That's why it's called cognitive consonance, in one direction. The emotional mind, chitta, and the cognitive mind, mano, are moving in one direction. They are not fighting one another. That is cognitive consonance. With that, you have stillness of mind. You can then attain this level of mental equilibrium. And from there, you will have vipassana. Distinct seeing, you're able to attain insight into realities. Anicca, dukkha, anatta, and fully comprehend the 4 noble truths. And then you will be able to gain, finally, the 2 fruits. Panya, wisdom, and vimutti, liberation. So I think it's late, so I won't go much further. So I'll end here.